I'd imagined my retirement day 100 different ways, and not one of them looked like this. The folding chairs in the community room were still lined up in neat rows. The paper banner over the refreshments table said, "Happy Retirement, Margaret," and there was a cake with my name written in blue icing that no one had touched. My co-workers from the library had done everything right. They had flowers, homemade cards, a slideshow of old photos, and a soft little speech from the branch manager that made me laugh and cry at the same time. Even the mayor's assistant had stopped by to shake my hand. People hugged me, people thanked me, people told me I had mattered. And then they left. By 5:30, the room was almost empty. The coffee had gone lukewarm. The balloons near the window kept bumping gently against the glass every time the door opened. I kept looking at my phone like it might suddenly become a different phone. Like maybe my daughter would call and say traffic had been awful, or my son would text that his truck had broken down, or my grandson would burst in late with a laugh and a guilty apology and a bunch of sunflowers from the gas station down the road. Instead, I got a message from my daughter, Erin. Running behind. "Don't wait up." That was it. No apology. No love you. No happy retirement, Mom. My son Tyler never even texted. He had read my message the night before, promised he would be there, then vanished like a dropped call. I stood there in my gray dress with my little retirement pin still fastened to my collar, and I tried not to let my face change. I was 64 years old. I had worked for 38 years in that library. I had shelved books, calmed angry patrons, helped children discover stories they would carry for the rest of their lives, and I had done it all while raising my 2 kids alone after my husband died. I had missed birthday parties, dinner dates, and holidays. I had picked up extra shifts when bills stacked too high. I had said yes when it should have been no. I had carried everybody, so I told myself not to cry over an empty room. That was when I heard a familiar voice from behind me. "Good. You're still here." I turned and saw Mrs. Ruth Bell standing in the doorway with a small paper bag in one hand and a white envelope in the other. Ruth was my neighbor from across the street, 79 years old. Sharp as a tack, with silver hair she wore in a neat twist and a habit of looking directly at people long enough to make them tell the truth. She had lived next to me for 15 years. She knew when my lawn needed mowing before I did. She knew when my car was acting up. She knew when my late husband, Henry, had been too sick to carry groceries inside and I had been pretending I was fine. And apparently, she had also come to my retirement party. She lifted the bag. "I brought lemon bars. Not from a store, real ones." I laughed, though it came out broken. "You came." "Well," she said, walking in and setting the bag beside the cake, "I wasn't about to let you sit here alone and eat your own retirement cake like some forgotten church widow." That made me laugh again, this time enough to wipe at my eyes before they could spill over. "You didn't have to come." "I know," she said. "I wanted to." She looked around the nearly empty room and clucked her tongue in that way she had. "Where are your children?" I shrugged, because the truth was too ugly to say out loud right away. Running behind, apparently. Ruth gave me a look that said she had already decided not to believe that. She set the envelope in my hand. It was thick, worn at the edges, and had my name written on the front in Henry's old handwriting. My whole body went still. I looked up at her. "This is from..." She nodded once. "Your Henry asked me to hold on to it." I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. Henry had been dead for 11 years. "I don't understand," I whispered. "You will," Ruth said. "But not standing here. Take your cake, take the envelope, and come home. We need to talk." Her voice was calm, but something in her eyes made my stomach tighten. I did what she said. I boxed up a piece of cake nobody had eaten, tucked the lemon bars under my arm, and drove home with the retirement banner and the emptiness sitting heavy inside me. My little house looked the same as always when I pulled into the driveway in the fading light. White siding, blue shutters. The maple tree in the front yard Henry had planted when Tyler was 8 and Erin was 6. The porch steps I still meant to repaint. The porch light my son kept promising to fix. A house full of ordinary things. And yet that night it felt like I was arriving at a place that no longer knew me. Before I got out of the car, I saw a moving truck parked at the curb 2 houses down. That was odd enough to make me pause. But what really stopped me cold was the sight of my daughter's SUV in my driveway. I sat there a second, hand on the steering wheel, thinking maybe, finally, they had come after all. Maybe they were inside, setting up a surprise. Maybe they had all been lying to protect the surprise. Maybe I was about to feel foolish for doubting my own family. Then I opened the front door and heard voices. Not happy voices, not surprised voices. Low, tense voices. I stepped inside and found Erin in my kitchen with a stack of manila folders on the table. Her jaw set the way it got when she wanted me to stop asking questions. Her husband, Rick, stood by the sink with one arm crossed over his chest, looking annoyed, as if my kitchen were his waiting room. Tyler was there too, leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone with the same detached expression he wore whenever he didn't want to deal with anything difficult. And there, right beside the fruit bowl, sat a cardboard box marked papers. For 1 second, I couldn't speak. Erin turned and forced a smile. "Mom, you're home." I looked from her face to the folders and back again. "What is all this?" Rick answered before she could. "Just getting organized." "Organized for what?" Tyler finally looked up. "For retirement, Mom." I stared at him. "This is my retirement day. You were supposed to be there." He shrugged. "We got tied up." "With what?" Erin answered too quickly. "The kids were having issues. Then the car—" "Don't," I said. The room went silent. I set the envelope from Henry down on the counter very carefully, like I was afraid my hands might shake too much to hold it. "Don't lie to me tonight. Not tonight." Rick gave a small, humorless laugh. "Nobody's lying." I turned to him. "Then why are you in my house with folders?" He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Erin shot him a warning look before turning to me with something close to patience. "Mom, can we talk tomorrow? We just wanted to make sure everything was in order." "Everything?" She stepped toward me, softening her voice. "You know the house taxes are going up, and with you not working anymore, we thought it would be smart to make some changes. Tyler found a guy who can help us refinance." I looked at Tyler. "You found a guy?" He shoved his phone into his pocket. "It's not a big deal." "Then why does it feel like one?" Erin reached for the top folder. "Sign here, and we can take care of it before things get messy." There it was. That tiny little phrase. Sign here. I had heard it too many times from too many people, usually right before they asked me to sacrifice something I could not afford to give. I crossed my arms. "What exactly am I signing?" "Paperwork," Rick said. I looked at him long enough for the air in the room to turn thin. That's not an answer. He leaned against the counter, all easy confidence and fake charm. "It's just a temporary transfer. Nothing permanent. We're trying to protect your assets. Protect my assets. From my own children." My pulse started to pound in my ears. I looked around the kitchen and saw boxes I had not packed, labeled with my name in Tyler's handwriting. I saw a stack of bank statements that I definitely had not pulled out. I saw the edge of a legal pad on the table with notes in Erin's tight, neat script. And then I saw one page sticking out from the folder in front of her. A deed. My name was printed at the top. My stomach went cold. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely holding together. Erin's face changed. Just slightly. A tiny crack in the mask. "Mom, what is this?" Rick answered this time, and his tone had gone hard. "You're overreacting." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Am I?" Tyler sighed like I was embarrassing him. "It's not like you use the cabin." The cabin? My chest tightened so fast I thought I might be sick. Henry's little lake cabin sat 40 minutes outside town. A narrow, weather-beaten place he had bought in cash years before he died. We had spent one summer there when the kids were small, and then life had gotten expensive and complicated and we had not been back much, but it was ours. Henry had told me once, long before the cancer took him, that it would always be mine. I turned to Erin. "You've been in the cabin?" She looked away. That was answer enough. "Who gave you permission?" No one spoke. The moving truck outside suddenly made sense. So did the folders. So did the weird calls I had ignored from a realtor last week. Calls I had thought must have been mistakes. So did the way Erin had been pressing me lately to get my affairs in order. The room seemed to spin a little, but I stood very still and asked the question I was suddenly terrified to know the answer to. "What did you do?" Rick straightened. "We were going to explain after your party." "After my party?" I said. There was no party. There was a room full of people who cared enough to show up, and the three of you couldn't even walk in the door. Mom, Aaron said sharply, stop making this into something it's not. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the way she wouldn't meet my eyes, at the tired hardness around her mouth, at the fact that she had brought folders instead of flowers, and then I understood something I did not want to understand. You were never coming to the library, I said quietly. Aaron went pale. You were never late. You were just never coming, Tyler muttered. That's not fair, but it was fair. It was more than fair. It was true. I looked at the envelope in front of me, then at my daughter, then at my son, and finally at the man who had married my daughter and somehow come to believe my life belonged to him. I want you all out, I said. Rick's expression shifted. You can't just kick us out. I can, I said. It's my house. Not for long, he snapped, and the words came out before he could stop them. Everything in me went still. What did you say? He seemed to realize too late what he had revealed. Erin closed her eyes. Tyler swore under his breath. I picked up the envelope Henry had left me, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Get out, I said, my voice rising now. All of you, out. Mom, calm down, Erin pleaded. We were only trying to help. By selling my cabin? It's not selling, Rick said. It's leveraging. Out, I said again. Nobody moved. I wish I could say I was brave in that moment. I was not brave. I was furious and hurt and terrified all at once. But then the front door opened again, and Ruth stepped inside without bothering to knock. She took one look at the scene in my kitchen and said, Ah, so this is where you were planning to corner her. Rick's face hardened. This isn't your business. It became my business when you tried to pass off forged paperwork as family help. The room went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. My head snapped toward her. Forged? Ruth held up the white envelope she had brought. Henry was right to trust me. Sit down, Maggie. I did not sit. I could not sit. Ruth set the envelope on the table and slid it toward me. Open it. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter written in Henry's neat, slanted script, a folded photocopy of a deed, and a key taped to the bottom. I looked up at Ruth in confusion, and she gave me a small nod. Read it. So I did. The first line made my knees weak. If you are reading this, then somebody finally did what I was afraid they might do. My breath caught. Henry's letter was short, but every word felt like a hand pulling me back from the edge of a cliff. He wrote that before he died, he had placed the cabin into a small trust for me, not because he expected anything terrible from our children, but because he knew how the world could change after grief. He wrote that Ruth had agreed to keep the key and the original papers safe. He wrote that if anyone ever tried to move the property without my knowledge, I should take the letter to a lawyer named Ellen Mercer downtown. Then, in smaller letters at the bottom, he had written, Take care of yourself, Maggie. You deserve a life that belongs to you. I pressed the paper against my chest. Erin started crying before I even looked at her. Tyler's face had gone blank. Rick swore under his breath and turned away. Ruth spoke, steady as stone. I went to the county records office this morning because I found a request for a title transfer in your name, Margaret. Somebody used a copy of your ID to open a file on the cabin 2 weeks ago. My head turned slowly toward my son-in-law. He held up both hands. You don't know what you're talking about. I know enough, Ruth said. And I know a forged signature when I see one. My mouth had gone dry. You used my ID? Rick's jaw flexed. We were going to fix it. You were going to sell it, I whispered. We had debt, Erin burst out. The words cracked through the room like a slap. I stared at her. Debt? Her face collapsed all at once, the hardness peeling off and leaving something scared and desperate underneath. We were behind, Mom. The credit cards, the truck payment, the repairs on the house, everything kept piling up. Rick said the cabin was just sitting there. You don't even go out there. You could have told me. I knew what you would say. I laughed then, but it sounded terrible. You mean no? She broke down completely after that, tears running down her face. We were trying to keep everything together. By stealing from me? No, she said, but it was weak. By borrowing. Tyler finally shoved himself away from the counter. It's not stealing if it's family. Ruth gave him a look so sharp it might have cut glass. That is exactly how stealing from family gets explained. Nobody answered her. I looked at my son, and for the first time I saw how far away he had gone from the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and ask me if I thought stars could hear us. He was 36 now, tired, angry, and hollowed out by his own excuses. I asked him quietly, "Did you know?" He did not answer. That was answer enough, too. I felt something in me go very still. Not cold, not dead, just still. Like the moment before a storm stops pretending it is only wind. "I want the truth," I said. "All of it." Rick gave a bitter sigh. "Fine." Tyler found the paperwork. We were going to use the cabin as collateral, refinance the house, pay off the cards, and get ahead before the bank started asking questions. That's all. That's all, I repeated. "We were going to put everything back," Aaron cried. "No," I said. "You were going to hide it from me. No one could deny that." I folded Henry's letter and placed it carefully on the counter. Then I looked at Ruth. "What do I do?" Her answer was immediate. "You call Ellen Mercer." "Tonight," Rick snorted. "And tell her what? That a family argument got out of hand?" Ruth smiled without warmth. "No. Tell her your son-in-law forged property records. Tell her your daughter tried to pressure you into signing over a trust. Tell her the county has already been notified. Then watch how quickly the tone changes." Something in Rick's face tightened. He knew, then. He knew Ruth was not bluffing. I did not call the lawyer right away. I called the bank first. Because when someone has your name on paper and your signature in a file, the first thing they try to take is whatever money they can reach fastest. I sat in my own kitchen while my daughter cried and my son stared at the floor and my son-in-law paced like a trapped animal, and I put my bank account on alert. Then I called Ellen Mercer. She answered on the second ring. By the time I finished explaining, she told me to bring every piece of paper I had to her office in the morning and not to sign another thing. She also told me, with a kind of grim courtesy, that the title transfer request already looked suspicious. She said the county clerk had flagged a mismatch in the acknowledgement stamp. She said we had enough to freeze the filing and begin a formal review. When I hung up, I realized I was trembling so hard the phone in my hand rattled against my teeth. Erin wiped her cheeks and stepped toward me. "Mom, please, don't do this." I turned slowly. "Do what?" "Call lawyers. Make this public." I stared at her, and my heart ached so hard it almost split me in two. "You came into my home with forged paperwork and a plan to sell the one place your father left me. What exactly should I do? Say thank you?" She flinched. "We were desperate." "So was I said. "For years, and I never stole from you." The sentence hung there, quiet and terrible. Tyler swore under his breath and punched the cabinet door so hard the wood rattled. "This is ridiculous." "No," Ruth said. "What's ridiculous is assuming your mother would never notice." Rick pointed a finger at me. "You think this is justice? You think some lawyer and a county file are going to fix your family?" I looked at him and saw, for the first time, the fear under his anger. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing control. "I think," I said, my voice low and steady now, "that you made a mistake." He laughed once, but it was nervous. "Oh, yeah?" "Yes," I said. "You forgot that I kept every statement, every note, every tax receipt, every email you ever sent me asking for money, and every single time you told me not to worry my head about the details." Erin froze. Tyler looked up. "Mom, I kept everything," I said, "in a blue folder in my desk drawer. The one you probably thought was only full of old recipes." Ruth gave a tiny approving nod. Rick's face changed completely. I understood then what I had not understood before. They had not come to my house to ask. They had come to finish, and they had been sure I would fold. The next morning, the truth began to move faster than they had expected. Ruth drove me downtown to Ellen Mercer's office in her silver sedan because my own hands were still unsteady from the night before. Ellen was a calm woman with reading glasses on a chain around her neck and an expression that made me trust her in the first 30 seconds. She spread my documents across her desk, examined the county notices, and asked me questions in a voice so measured it never once made me feel small. Then she looked up and said, "Mrs. Hayes, this is not just a family disagreement. This is financial coercion, possible identity misuse, and an attempted fraudulent transfer. We are going to protect your assets immediately." I sat there, stunned by the fact that someone was speaking to me like I mattered. Ellen sent formal letters that same morning. The county froze the cabin filing. The bank placed a hold on any attempt to redraw from my line of credit. She contacted a title company and requested the recording history. Within hours, we had proof that a document had been submitted with my name on it and an altered notary stamp. The signature was not mine. The dates did not line up. The witnesses were wrong. It should have been enough to make me feel powerful. Instead, it made me feel sadder than ever, because proof has a way of confirming what your heart already knows. By noon, Aaron called my phone 14 times. I did not answer. Tyler left 2 voicemails, one angry and one frightened. Rick sent one text that said, "You are making a huge mistake," and another that simply said, "We can still fix this. Fix it," as if it had only gotten cracked. That evening, Ruth came back over with soup in a pot and a folding chair under one arm. I stared at her when she set it down in my kitchen. "What is that for?" "In case you need to throw someone out," she said. "Despite everything?" I laughed. We sat at the table while the soup warmed, and I finally asked her the question that had been in my chest all day. "Why did Henry trust you with that letter?" Ruth looked down at her hands for a moment before answering. "Because your husband was kinder than your children are acting right now, and he knew I had worked in county records for 20 years. He also knew I had a habit of minding my business until somebody tried to cheat a widow." I stared at her. She gave a shrug. "He came to me about 6 months before he died. Said he was worried one of the kids might try to lean on you too hard if he wasn't around. I told him they were good kids. He said, 'They are right now, but fear changes people.'" That sentence hit me harder than anything else had. Fear changes people. Henry had known. And maybe I had known, too. In some quiet place I had refused to name. The confrontation came 2 days later. Ellen told me not to meet them alone, so she joined me in my living room along with Ruth, because Ruth had no interest in missing the performance. Erin came first, her face swollen from crying. Tyler came after, shoulders tight and hands shoved into his pockets. Rick did not come inside right away. He stood on the porch for a long second, looking at the house like he was already planning how to leave it behind. I sat in Henry's old armchair with the letter in my lap. Erin's voice broke the moment she saw me. "Mom, please." I did not answer. She took a step closer. "I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked. The question seemed to knock the breath out of her. "For all of it." "No," I said. "I need to hear the thing you are sorry for." Her mouth opened, then closed. "Say it clearly," I told her. "What are you sorry for?" Tears filled her eyes again. "I'm sorry for trying to take the cabin." "And?" She swallowed hard. "I'm sorry for lying." "And?" She looked at Tyler, and he looked away. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm sorry we made you feel alone." That was the first honest thing she had said since this began, and it cracked something inside me open in a way I had not expected. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the hard edge of pure rage shifted enough for grief to rush in underneath it. I nodded once. "That is the first true thing you've said to me." Tyler rubbed his face. "We didn't mean to hurt you. Then what did you think you were doing?" He had no answer. Rick finally came in after that, wearing the expression of a man who had already lost too much pride to act polite. He saw Ellen and Ruth sitting in my living room and gave a tight smile. "So this is official." Ellen put her folder on the coffee table. "It was official the moment you attempted to move title without authorization." Rick's lips pressed into a thin line. "We were going to pay it all back." "From what?" Ruth asked. "Your good intentions." He glared at her, then turned to me. "You're really going to let lawyers tear your family apart over a piece of property?" I looked at him and felt, to my surprise, almost nothing. "No," I said. "You did that yourself." His face turned red. "You think you're some kind of saint now because you got your feelings hurt?" "No," I said. "I think I am someone who finally learned the difference between love and convenience." The room went quiet. Ellen cleared her throat. "Mr. Dawson, the bank has reviewed several recent transactions. There are issues with a signature on a home equity request, and a mail forwarding form submitted under Mrs. Hayes's information. If this proceeds through court, the records will be examined. Rick's mouth opened slightly. Tyler looked like he had been hit in the chest. What form? I turned to him. You didn't know? He looked at Rick, and whatever passed between them in that second told me he did know enough to be ashamed. Erin covered her mouth. There it was. The deeper cut. They had not merely panicked. They had built their little plan one step at a time and told themselves each step was still forgivable. That is how people do terrible things without ever admitting they are terrible. Rick tried one last time. We were going to keep you in the loop. Ruth gave a soft snort. After you sold the cabin. He ignored her and looked at me instead. You could still back off. Family is family. I held Henry's letter in both hands. Family is supposed to be the people who would never use your name to empty your life. Nobody spoke. Then Ellen added, you should also know that if a transfer was attempted using altered identification or a false acknowledgement, there may be criminal implications. That got his attention. Rick's face changed from irritation to calculation, and in that moment I knew justice would not be gentle. It would be paperwork, hearings, bank reviews, testimony, consequences. Real consequences. The kind that do not disappear because somebody says sorry in a living room. By the end of the week, the chain began to break. The title company reported the altered notary stamp. The bank traced the home equity application to an account linked to Rick's business email. The county clerk confirmed the filing had been submitted in person by someone matching Tyler's description on the security camera. That part shocked me most. Tyler. My boy. I had spent so many years thinking he was simply drifting, when in truth he had been helping steer the whole thing. He denied it until the video was shown. After that, he stopped looking at me altogether. Rick lost his place with the real estate firm almost immediately when the compliance review started. That was not my doing. That was reality. Finally catching up. The bank froze every account tied to the suspicious transactions. Erin's employer required her to take an immediate leave after the investigation touched one of the insurance documents she had signed. The cabin remained mine. My house remained mine. My pension remained mine. The little bit of Henry's stock account that had been quietly growing all those years remained mine, too. Because Henry, bless him, had insisted on keeping it separate and naming me the sole beneficiary. That last part came as a surprise even to me. Ellen found the stock records tucked in with the cabin trust papers. There is enough here, she said, glancing up from the file. For a real restart if you want one. A real restart. No one had ever offered me that before. Not honestly. Not without strings. Erin came by once after the investigation started, but she stood on the porch instead of entering the house. She looked thinner somehow, as if the weight she had been pretending to carry had finally become visible to everyone else. I'm not asking you to stop, she said through tears. I know I don't deserve that. I waited. I just needed you to know I'm sorry, in a way I've never been sorry for anything before. For a long time, I said nothing. Then I told her the truth. I love you, I said. That does not erase what you did, and what you did does not erase that I love you. She cried harder at that, because love can be cruel when it arrives after damage. But it is still love. I did not invite her in. Not that day. Not yet. Tyler never managed a proper apology. He sent one text after the hearings began, saying he was ashamed and that he did not know how to fix what he had broken. I told him the truth there, too. Start by telling the truth in the place where you stopped. He never answered. I do not know if that sentence saved him or haunted him. Maybe both. As for Rick, the legal process took months. There were hearings, notices, written statements, and a settlement that forced him to repay what he could. Sell the truck he had purchased with money that had not been his, and step away from the life he had built on pretending other people's boundaries did not matter. It was not dramatic in the way movies make things dramatic. No handcuffs, no shouting in court, just consequences, steady and undeniable. That was enough for me. Because the truth is, the best revenge is not fireworks. It is being seen clearly. It is no longer being the soft place where everyone else lands while they sharpen their knives. It is standing up at last and saying, not this time. About a month later, I went out to the lake cabin for the first time in years. Ruth drove me again. because she said she had a feeling I would chicken out if I went alone. She was right. When I saw the little place sitting there under the trees, weathered but still solid, something in my chest ached in a way that almost made me fold in half. Henry had loved that cabin. He had loved the porch with the crooked railing and the squeaky screen door, and the tiny kitchen that smelled like wood and coffee. I had loved it too, once. But what I had not known until that day was that the cabin was not just a memory. It was an opportunity. Ellen explained the value in plain terms. The land had increased over time. The market had changed. The place itself, though modest, sat on a stretch of property that developers had begun circling. The trust Henry set up had grown enough that, if I chose carefully, I could sell the cabin and still have more than enough left to begin something new. I stood on the porch while the wind moved through the trees and thought about all the years I had put my own dreams at the bottom of every list. As a girl, I had wanted a little bookstore, not a chain store, not a fancy business, just a warm room full of used books, good tea, and the smell of cinnamon rolls. I used to tell Henry about it when we were young and broke and laughing at life, and he would say, "One day, Maggie, one day you'll have your shelves." I had stopped believing in that dream somewhere between mortgage payments and pediatric visits and funeral arrangements and the 1,000 practical things that swallow a woman whole. Now, standing there with Ruth beside me and the lake water shining through the trees, I felt that old dream stir awake like it had only been sleeping. So I sold the cabin, not because my family had stolen it from me. They had not. Not in the end. I sold it because I wanted to choose my life instead of defending it. With Ellen's help, I found a small storefront downtown that had once been a dry cleaner and was now dusty, empty, and full of possibility. A landlord who had a soft spot for retirees gave me a decent lease. Ruth helped me paint. My former coworkers showed up with shelves, mugs, a second-hand espresso machine, and more books than I knew what to do with. Tyler's daughter, my granddaughter Mia, came too, with paint on her sneakers and a grin I had missed terribly. Even Erin came eventually, quietly, after a long stretch of no contact. She did not come asking for money. She came carrying a box of old recipe cards she had found in Henry's handwriting. She stood in the doorway of the half-finished shop and looked around with red eyes. "I don't expect anything," she said. I believed her. She added, "I just wanted to help if you'll let me." I looked at the box, at the faded cards, at my husband's looping script on the top one that read cinnamon coffee cake for rainy days, and I said yes. Not because the past had vanished, not because trust had magically returned, but because justice is not the same thing as permanent exile. Sometimes justice is letting the truth settle and then deciding what kind of future you still want to build. The day my little cafe opened, the line went out the door. People came because Ruth told them to. People came because my old library customers were curious. People came because small towns always love a new place to gossip over and then grow attached to. We had cinnamon rolls, coffee, tea, pie, and a corner full of books people could trade and take home. I painted a sign by the register that said Second Chapter Cafe, because that was what it felt like. A second chapter, a life that belonged to me. I will not pretend Erin and Tyler became different people overnight. They did not. People who break trust do not turn into saints just because consequences arrive. But something shifted. Tyler finally admitted in a court statement that he had let Rick handle too much because he was tired of feeling like a failure. Erin admitted she had believed if she could keep one crisis hidden, the rest of her life would stop unraveling. Neither excuse made what they did right. But understanding is not the same as excusing, and I had enough years left to know the difference. Rick vanished from the picture by the time the settlement was complete. That was the cleanest ending I could have hoped for, frankly. He had fed on pressure and secrets, and when both were gone, there was nothing left to stand on. He moved away after the final paperwork, and I did not ask where. A few weeks after the cafe opened, I found Ruth sitting by the window with a lemon bar and the kind of satisfied smile only old women and successful conspirators can wear. She pointed at the room full of people sipping coffee and flipping through books. Not bad for a retirement gift. I looked around at the warm light, the chatter, the shelves, the smell of cinnamon and fresh ground coffee, and I felt something I had almost forgotten was possible. Peace. Do you know what the strangest part is? I asked her. What? I smiled a little. I thought retirement day was the end of everything. Ruth took a slow bite of lemon bar and raised her brows. And? I looked toward the front door, where the afternoon sun was turning the glass gold. It was the day my life finally started. And that is the truth. Not the pretty truth. Not the easy one. The real truth. Nobody came to my retirement day except an old neighbor with an envelope, a clue, and enough courage to tell me what my own family had been trying to hide. That day broke my heart clean open. It also set me free. My children learned that love is not a blank check. My son-in-law learned that shortcuts leave evidence. My daughter learned that desperation is not an excuse for betrayal. And I learned, after a lifetime of giving everyone else the first and last word, that my own life was still mine to claim. Now, every morning, I unlock my shop before the sun gets fully over the rooftops. I put the kettle on, I stack the books, I wipe down the tables. Sometimes Ruth comes in first. Sometimes Mia does. Sometimes Erin comes quietly and helps without asking for praise. Sometimes I catch myself smiling for no reason at all. There are still days when the hurt rises up unexpectedly. There are still moments when I think of the empty chairs and the cake nobody ate, and my throat tightens with the memory of it. But then I look around at the place I built from the ashes of being overlooked, and I remember that loneliness is not the final word. Not if you refuse to let it be. Not if one old neighbor shows up when nobody else does. Not if you are brave enough to answer the door.